Well, I think we can all agree Julio Rodriguez should be an all-star at this point, but why stop there? Let's talk about it here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by Blue Nile. Make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com, and Locked On Mariners listeners get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement jewelry as well. Use promo code Locked On at checkout. It is Tuesday, July 5th, 2022, and thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. I am your host, Ty Gonzalez, joined as always by my co-host, Colby Patnode. We cover the Mariners over at InsideTheMariners.com for fan Nation over on the Sports Illustrated Network. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter at LO_Mariners. Follow Inside the Mariners at Inside Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez, that's DANE, GNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. Be sure to also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Control the Zone. We post 2 additional podcasts on there every single week. And if this is your first time joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast, welcome to the show. If you like what you hear, give us a follow or subscribe wherever you're listening to this. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and give this video a thumbs up. We greatly appreciate it. The Mariners exploded for 18 hard hit balls off of Padres pitching yesterday to the tune of an 8-2 win. Chris Flexen goes 6 2/3 scoreless. But we're going to be talking about Julio on today's show. We're also going to be talking about Robbie Ray, who since the last time Colby and I spoke on this show had another magnificent start. And we're also going to talk a little bit about trades, particularly in the rotation. But Colby, let's start off by talking about this Julio guy. He's pretty decent at baseball, right?
I mean, I think anytime you beat Barry Bonds at something, I think that qualifies as good at baseball. He's also the first player in Major League history to have 15 home runs, 15 doubles, and 20 stolen bases in his first 80 games. So, yeah, that's pretty good. And, oh, by the way, he's playing a plus defensive center field as well on top of all of it. So, oh, and he's 21. Oh, and he lost like a year and a half of development time due to various injuries and the COVID shutdown. So, yeah, I'd say it's pretty good. And I mean, it's gotten to the point over the last 2 weeks where it's so good that I'm beginning to question if maybe we're not exactly talking about the right things when it comes to Julio Rodriguez.
Yeah, so right now, a lot of the talk is around his all-star status and whether or not he's going to make the all-star team. I think it's pretty clear at this point that he is an all-star. He's the third most valuable outfielder in the American League by FWAR, just right behind Aaron Judge and Mike Trout. A couple of pretty good names to be in the midst of there. But I believe that you're potentially alluding to some MVP talk, if I'm not mistaken here. And there are some numbers here that support it, right? Because, of course, April was incredibly disappointing for him. There's all the strikeouts, and of course, there was all the really bad, called strike threes on him as well. That kind of inflated that number on top of everything. But since May 1st, he's gone 69, nice, for 232 with 15 home runs, 37 RBI, 12 doubles, 2 triples, 11 stolen bases, 61 strikeouts, and 16 walks. So 162 game pace is 183 for 616 with 40 home runs, 98 RBI, 32 doubles, 5 triples, 29 stolen bases, 162 strikeouts, 42 walks, and a FWAR of 7.4, right? That's an MVP candidate. So
yeah, it sure is.
Do you think his April ends up holding him back here in the end?
Possibly. He's about a full win behind the leaders by FWAR anyways, behind Judge. But the thing about Julio is that he is not accelerating at a linear pace. He's getting better exponentially. And so I think he's gained a full win in the last week to 10 days on FWAR's metrics. So like I said, he's not gradually building up here. He's accelerating and growing at a rate that is going to be difficult to match. There's no guarantee that, by the All-Star break, he's not top 5 in F4 in the American League. And right now he's number 9 or you've seen the home run power really just now start. He's hit half of his home runs in the last 10 days or so. So there really isn't any limit to what Julio can do. He's got 2020 by the break, which seemed a bit, hyperbolic to say is possible just a week ago, but he's 5 home runs short right now. So he's definitely got that chance. He's playing a plus center field. He's going to have the narrative. He's going to be the only guy in baseball this year to go 30-30, assuming he stays healthy and he gets there. He's going to be 21. And if the Mariners make the playoffs, he's going to have that narrative pushing him too. The Mariners playoff drought has been well documented. It has been talked about by national writers for years now. Julio has the buildup. He has the backing, and he's about to have the numbers to really put him in that conversation. So are the odds likely that he's going to win it? I would say unless the Mariners make the playoffs, I don't think he has much of a shot. But he absolutely should be. We should be talking about him getting MVP votes, and I think he will, especially if he continues at this pace. 30-30. I mean, that's putting a limit on Julio. I don't want to do that. 40-40 is a very real possibility. And like I said, this is on top of plus defense, and it's on top of the fact that he's 21 years old, and you can really start to build a narrative here that if Julio continues to get exponentially better as he has over the last 2 weeks, sky's the limit here. And we're talking about a guy who not only hits but plays a plus center field. That's a very valuable player.
And I mean, just look at the home run that he hit yesterday over the warehouse at Petco Park in left field. I've never seen a Mariner ever do that. Like that, we're in uncharted territory here, folks. Like, Julio Rodriguez is a special dude. And the fact that he's 21 years old and the fact that his numbers look like this, despite the month of April that he had, ridiculous. Like, this guy is absolutely just playing out of his mind right now. He has been the 8th most valuable player in all of baseball by F4 since May 1st. That's when he hit his first home run down in Miami. And he's ahead of guys like Mike Trout, right? Like, he's tied with Trey Turner. Like, the only guys that he is behind since the start of May in F4, Paul Goldschmidt, Dansby Swanson, Rafael Devers, Yordan Alvarez, Aaron Judge, and Alejandro Kirk. Like, we're talking about an elite baseball player who's just 21 years old and is doing stuff that no one has ever done before in baseball history. Like, the literal history of the game. 100 plus years of baseball has been played, and no one is doing what Julio Rodriguez has done.
Yep. He's got an impressive highlight package too, which does help with voters. He's hitting the big home runs. He's hitting 435-foot bombs. He's making these diving catches in center field. He's stealing big bases. He's taking the extra base. He's legging out infield singles. He's got this really impressive highlight package that kind of shows how well-rounded of a player he is. I think the only thing missing right now is an outfield assist, and we know that's coming eventually. So it's going to be hard if Julio keeps playing like this for voters to leave Julio off of their MVP ballots. And if Seattle makes this big charge up the wild card standings and sneaks in, there's going to be a lot of people calling him the dark horse, and I think it's going to collect him quite a few votes.
And now the Mariners are just 4 games out of a wild card spot, and they've won 4 of their last 5, despite being without J.P. Crawford and Jesse Winker during that time. And Julio has more or less helped, carry the load here for the Mariners. Another guy that's helped carry the load a little bit here, at least back on Sunday, was Robbie Ray. We're going to be talking about him in just a moment. But real quick, a reminder, this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by Blue Nile. Whether you're ready to pop the question or you're celebrating a milestone moment, find jewelry as unique as them with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. Blue Nile has simple online tools that let you choose the diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as setting style. Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then handcraft their perfect engagement ring, and each ring will be a one-of-a-kind design. Looking for fine jewelry but having trouble choosing? Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. Make your moments sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com, and Locked On Mariners listeners get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement jewelry as well. Use promo code Locked On, that's LOCKEDON, plus every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen of the day. So, since the last time you and I talked, Colby, Robbie Ray had another start, and he had arguably his best start of the year, maybe. 12 strikeouts, that's a season high. 27 swings and misses, also a season high for him. And the only blemish on his record for the day was a solo home run to Elvis Andrus, which annoyingly ended his day before he could finish out the seventh inning. But it was a great start for Ray, and he just continues to dominate. And yes, opponent quality, blah 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 blah, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. But let me just read off these numbers to you. Since June 12th, that's the first start that he had. That was against the Red Sox, a shutout start against the Red Sox. That was his first start since he refound that, or he reincorporated the sinker. And so since then, he's fifth amongst all MLB starters in F4. 1.1. He's first in innings pitched. He's first in strikeouts. He's first in win probability added. He's tied second in runs allowed with just 3, and he's tied 10th in whiff rate. So again, opponent quality, he's faced the A's twice. He's faced the Orioles once. He faced an Angels team without Shohei Ohtani or Jared Walsh, all in this stretch. But what is it that you're seeing from him right now that suggests this is either sustainable or not sustainable?
Yeah, well, first, I want to take an opportunity to take a shot at the Angels, because why not? We should probably stop saying that we should probably stop qualifying Ray's start by saying Ohtani and Walsh aren't in it, because even with those guys in the lineup, the Angels are a bad team. So let's get that out of the way right here. But yeah, it's interesting with Ray. I was at the game. He really struggled in the first inning, at least from my vantage point, which was directly behind home plate. He'd get to 2 strikes, and he didn't exactly put guys away in the first inning. But then, I'm online, I'm looking at it, and it appears he got squeezed pretty hard in the first inning, and it probably cost him, I was told, between 10 to 15 pitches. And yet, despite throwing 25, I think it was, pitches in the first inning, he basically went 7, and he was 1 strike away from going 7. He only threw 107 pitches. That's not out of the realm of possibility. The slider was great. The sinker, he got 9 whiffs on the sinker on 16 swings. The sinker is not traditionally a swing and miss pitch. And then of course he followed it up for good measure with 7. I mean, he was dominant. And I do think it is about that sinker. Because, everything Robbie Ray throws kind of breaks in to righties. The fastball, the slider, the curveball, they all kind of break into righties. The sinker breaks away from righties. And I think Elvis Andrus alluded to this himself. He said Ray's a lot tougher now because the 2-seamer, he can run it off the outside corner and get you to chase it. Andrus, of course, one of the few guys who's been able to square up Robbie Ray recently. And, the home run he hit was a 94-mile-an-hour fastball that was elevated and in the middle of the plate. Just a bad pitch. Unfortunately, it was Ray's last one of the day. But I do think it's that sinker. Not only is he starting to get whiffs with it, which is huge, it continues to be a high ground ball pitch. And again, it's just something different. It's something that hitters around the league have to account for now. They know he's going to throw it. And it plays off the slider very, very well. So, I mean, you get 27 whiffs against any lineup. I don't care who it is. That's really impressive. And it's just kind of been a continuation. We've seen Ray kind of have these bigger strikeout games. He had 10 strikeouts in 6 innings, I believe. Now he's had 12 in 6 2/3. But we've also seen him pitch against the Red Sox and only get like 3 strikeouts, but just get a ton of weak ground balls and keep his pitch count in check. So Ray's kind of evolving. He's kind of a guy who can beat you in multiple ways right now. That makes him very dangerous when you consider he still has the wicked slider in his back pocket.
Yeah, the fact that he's generating so much weak contact now with the sinker, I believe the A's only had a couple of hard hit balls off of him in this game as well, including the one from Andrews, and so the fact that he's able to do that and also has swing and miss stuff. I mean, that's kind of the perfect combination for a starting pitcher, right? Especially in today's game, generating weak contact and missing bats, like that's everything you could possibly want. So it's no surprise that he's leading the league in all these categories over the last month or so, or the last at least 3 weeks that he's been pitching. And so, and this is a new version of Robbie Ray. This is kind of how we need to evaluate Robbie Ray now, is from mid-June to now, instead of full season, because he just didn't have that pitch. He literally did not use the sinker until June 6th. That was the first time he threw it all season. And so he's a different pitcher than he was when this season began and when he was struggling. And so, yeah, it's really exciting. Would like to see it against, better quality, lineups, of course, and that's naturally going to happen. He's going to be facing his old team here coming up, so that should be pretty interesting. Robbie Ray revenge game. Looking forward to talking about that later on this week. Yeah, so we'll see how it applies to more dangerous lineups. But this is great. This is everything that you could possibly ask for from your 5-year $115 million pitcher.
Yep. I mean, right now he's sporting a lower xERA than he had last year in his Cy Young year. Yeah. So the numbers are basically more or less where you want them to be. Strikeouts are down a little bit from his career norm. We know that. A lot of that has to do with April and also May. But you look at things like X batting average is right in line. Average exit velocity has actually been down a little bit this year. It's more or less. Walks are elevated slightly. More or less, you look at the expected numbers, Robbie Ray has been about as good as he was last year.
And would you say that maybe the pitcher that he is now, because it's obviously a different product than what he produced last year, would you say that this is more conducive to success than what he was last year?
I would say it's more sustainable because it's multifaceted. Look, Ray's always going to be a guy who's going to give up home runs. It's just part of him. So I would say it's more sustainable, though, over a 5-year stretch than, say, striking out 13 guys and only walking 2 per 9 and all that stuff. So yeah, it's definitely sustainable, and it is what you paid for. He's the number 2 right now, and the way he's pitching, he gives you a shot to beat anybody in the American League.
Yeah, and that's awesome, and that's absolutely what you're going to need, especially when you go into series like the one coming up against the Blue Jays. You're going to need Robbie Ray to be at the top of his game. So really looking forward to that. We're going to be talking about him more later on this week. But let's stick with the rotation here and kind of talk, look down the road a little bit here, because the trade deadline is coming up soon. We're less than a month away now from the trade deadline. And the Mariners are going to have to do something with their rotation, whether it's number 2, number 3 starter, or at least someone that can go in on the back end of their rotation. We'll be talking about why in just a moment. But real quick, a reminder, this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning like, is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? And wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. So why choose to spend 30%, 50%, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? For example, a Honda Odyssey fuel pump is $353 from a chain store, whereas with Rock Auto, it's only $216. Plus, Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years, and their prices are reliably low for every customer. So go to rockauto.com right after you're done listening to us and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Colby, you wrote an article yesterday talking about 3 under the radar trade targets on InsideTheMariners.com, and one of them was Blake Snell, who is a member of the team the Mariners are currently playing, the Padres. But he's having another down year by his standards. And of course, he's a Washington native. He might come relatively cheap because he is making money, and the Padres are getting close to that tax threshold. So they might want to free up some payroll there so they can start making a bit more bigger moves this season. Over the next few weeks, because they are in a pretty good spot right now. They're 47-35, I believe, second place in the NL West, going for a wild card, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I saw a response, or a couple of responses to your article, just like, well, why would you want Blake Snell? We got George Kirby, we got Chris Flexen, we got Marco Gonzalez, and you in the article said Snell might give you more upside than Flexen or Gonzalez. So I'll ask you about that, but I also want to mention here real quick, though, for those that are listening, that another thing that we have to keep in mind here is George Kirby is eventually going to hit an innings cap. It's just going to happen. He's a rookie guy. They want to manage his innings. It happens. This is the case with any pitcher. I mean, shoot, think about Steven Strasburg. The Nationals were in a position to be in the playoffs, and they shut him down right before the postseason, or in the postseason. I forget what it actually was. It's a long time ago. But like, these things happen, and it doesn't matter what the scenario is or what situation you find yourself in. You're going to try to take care of your guys no matter what. So at a certain point, the Mariners are going to have to add someone to this rotation. So first, again, let's start with the first point here. Why do you think Snell would give the Mariners more upside than someone like Chris Flexen or Marco Gonzalez?
Because it's obvious. Blake Snell has been a Cy Young Award winner. He is missing bats still at a very impressive rate. He would actually be your new strikeout leader if you acquired him, in case for 9 at least. And yeah, there are issues. He is a guy who typically only goes 5, maybe 6 innings at most. He's not a guy who gets deep into games, and right now he's really struggling with walks. And somewhat oddly, it's been only in his time in San Diego. He didn't really struggle to this degree with his controller command in Tampa Bay at all. So I don't know what that's about, but I think you look at I think a lot of people get hung up on ERA, and they say, well, that's the one stat I'm going to use. And Snell's ERA, for example, is at 5. It's over 5. It's 5.12. Whereas Chris Flexen's, I believe, after yesterday's really good start, is at 4 flat. So people look at that and they say, well, Flexen's better. But you start looking at the other numbers. Snell has a 3.72 xERA, a 3.71 FIP, and a 4.04 xFIP. Meanwhile, you look at Chris Flexen. Chris Flexen's xERA is 5.39. His FIP is 4.33. His xFIP is 4.90. Not as good. Objectively not as good. You also look at this and you say, well, why does that matter? Well, let's look at WAR for a second. Chris Flexen has been worth 0.8 FWAR, and that includes yesterday's really, let's call it what it was, dominant start. Snell has pitched half the innings that Flexen has. He has a 0.7 FWAR. So Snell's objectively better. He's got better stuff, and he's more likely to go toe-to-toe with a legitimate ace than somebody like Chris Flexen. It doesn't mean Flexen can't do it on occasion. It just means that it's not something that he's regularly going to do. Snell is better. He has better stuff. He also has a year of club control beyond this year, so it's not just a one-year rental type of thing. You mentioned the Padres. They're up against the luxury tax. They show no willingness to go over it, and they do have other trades to make. You look at that lineup last night. Did that lineup terrify you?
Mm-mm.
No.
They got Nomar Mazara playing like every day
regularly.
For them.
Yes. And I know it'll get better when Tatis gets there. I understand that. If Tatis gets there,
yes. Yeah, we were talking to Javier Reyes yesterday of the Locked On Padres podcast, and he wasn't committed to Tatis coming back. So that's certainly a possibility that he doesn't come back. But yeah, the Padres are going to have to do something here to free up some payroll, whether that's Will Myers, whether that's Eric Hosmer, whether that's Blake Snell, Yu Darvish, etc. They're going to have to move some money off of the books here in order to make some other moves, because like you said, they haven't been willing thus far to go over that luxury tax threshold, and that's a big chunk of change that teams are going to have to pay if they go over that. So and as we all know, MLB owners, doesn't matter how much money they make, they're not going to be willing to do that. So yeah, I've always liked the Snell idea. Plus it would be a homecoming for him and everything. That's cool. And I think that the Mariners could get more out of him than any other organization, frankly, because the Mariners pitching development is top notch. It's one of the best in the league.
Right. But by the way, with Snell, right, you don't necessarily have to replace Flexen or Marco. You did mention
Right.
Kirby is going to hit his innings cap, but maybe you go with a 6-man rotation for a while to kind of try and stretch Kirby into
Sure.
September and October. And we also need to be aware that the Mariners have only used 7 starters this year, which is among the lowest in baseball. One of them was an opener on a doubleheader day. So in reality, the Mariners have used 6 starters this year, and they only made a change. It wasn't due to injury. The Mariners' rotation has been remarkably healthy this year.
Yeah, and that's kind of scary.
That sounds like a ticking time bomb to me.
Yeah, that's scary because everyone goes through injuries in the rotation.
Yes.
It doesn't matter whatever the team is. And now that, Matt Brash has been converted to the bullpen, at least for this year, that limits your starting pitching depth. Right now, the first guy in line, if there's an injury, might be Tommy Malone. And then after that, Justice Sheffield. And then after that, we're talking guys that have never pitched to the major league level before, like Taylor Dollard, Levi Stout, etc. So I think the Mariners, they're going to want to go in. They're going to go into the trade deadline wanting to get a number 2 or number 3, and that's going to get even harder now that it looks like Frankie Montas is going to miss some time with shoulder injury. That limits the market even more. Now that means that guys like Tyler Mahle and Luis Castillo are going to be even more expensive and even more hard to get than ever before. So, I know that they're going to want to get it, one of those guys heading into the deadline. That might not be realistic though. And so it might behoove them to more so go after, the Tyler Andersons of the world, or the like how they did last year, or at least one of those. Get one guy that is kind of in that mold, and then maybe go after someone with a bit more upside, like a Blake Snell. I think that's probably how they're going to have to go after it, because like aside from the Reds guys, right? Like Zach Gallen going to cost a ton. To trade for. Pablo Lopez going to be ridiculous ask. Like this is like huge returns that we're talking about for these guys that are actually realistically available, that significantly raise your ceiling in the rotation. So I don't know if the Mariners are going to be comfortable doing that.
Which means you kind of have to go out and you have to go find, a guy that nobody thinks is, a number 3 or whatever, and turn him into that number 3. And
JT Brubaker.
Right. Guys like that. But Snell is a guy who could do that, because right now Snell is a number 5, and he's a pretty good one. And you just want to see a disaster scenario, get past the trade deadline and watch, George Kirby get shut down, and then in the middle. Need starting pitching. And by the way, there's nothing stopping the Mariners from going out for Blake Snell and Luis Castillo. They can go get more than 2. They can go get more than one guy and really protect themselves. And you say, well, how do you get all those guys innings? I don't know. How did the Dodgers do it? How do the Padres do it? The Padres have like 7 starters that they get innings to. And again, injuries are going to happen. They're going to be a part of this. And if you're telling me right now I could have a healthy Frankie Montas replace Marco, and a healthy Blake Snell replace Flexen, I'm all over that. Because then you have a rotation that is not only, one of the best this year, you go into next year with Blake Snell competing to be the number 5 starter. Like, there may not be a better rotation in baseball than one that has Blake Snell as the number 5, like the true number 5. So yeah, I'm kind of all in, and Seattle is in a unique position right now where they can take on salary. They have the prospect capital. They have the rotation spots to give. There aren't many teams that are going to be able to help San Diego the way Seattle can. And so maybe it's a 3-team deal. Maybe it's San Diego acquires Luis Castillo, and pays most of the prospect rate to Cincinnati, but Seattle pitches in like a Levi Stout or something and gets, I don't know, maybe Blake Snell and Brandon Drury or something like that.
Right.
and they kind of do it that way. So I think Seattle and San Diego line up really well because basically I think if Seattle wanted to get Blake Snell for free, they could. I think if
Mhm.
they take Will Myers, they're giving up Brian Wu and Nathaniel Garapitos for Will Myers and Blake Snell. They can do that, and they can
Yeah.
absorb that money. And both of those players probably help Seattle. So I think they can get creative with it. But yeah, if it's not Blake Snell, then it's fine. JT Brubaker's a great option there. But Seattle needs an upgrade over Flexen, and if nothing else, even if you love Chris Flexen, they need depth, and they need legitimate major league depth because they do not have it right now.
Yeah, they need to protect themselves from the event
Mm-hmm.
that Tommy Malone ends up, starting games in August and September.
Yeah.
So, because that's a very real possibility here. It's I don't want to like doom or curse the Mariners here, but like
Right.
starting rotation injuries happen. That's a part of the game. That's a part of every season. The ebbs and flows of the season. It's just for every team, and most teams, that are actually able to compete for the postseason and beyond, they have the depth to survive that. And right now, just the Mariners, like they have some intriguing arms, like with guys like Dollard and Stout, kind of waiting in the wings. But I don't know if you really want to leave your season, hanging in the balance of those guys right now. So yeah, so even if it's just another Tyler Anderson type or two, that helps, frankly. So I think the Mariners and Jerry Dipoto need to be open to really anything here when it comes to the starting rotation and not just solely focus in on those number 2, number 3 types. So that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow Inside the Mariners at Inside Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez, that's DaneGNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. And thank you again for making us your first listen of the day, just like you do here every day. Now make your second listen of the day Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts, just like us. And with that, have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.